Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to Side Hustle Ideas. I am Bill, the company's expert. Thank you for joining me today. This is the weekly live stream where we talk about everything to do with entrepreneurship, business, side hustles, that kind of thing. So if you are looking to tack on a side hustle or start your own small business or startup, anything like that, you've come to the right place. That's what we talk about here. This is an interactive live stream, and that means that if you're seeing my beautiful face, then you should be able to see a chat box somewhere in the vicinity of my face, probably below it, but you never know. Get in the chat box, and if you are a subscriber of my channel, you can get in there and ask me questions. Let me know what you're wondering. Let me know what you're struggling with. Let me know what I can maybe help you with, and I'll do my best to do so. So the title of this episode is FTX, Theranos, WeWork, leadership traits that apparently fool us. This is the 78th episode of Side Hustle Ideas, so thank you for being here. And as always, a shout out to my YouTube channel members, my Patreons, my super thanks donors, and of course to you, my participants. Thank you for being here. Okay, listen, normally we talk about small business and startups, but today it's a little bit of a stretch. I'm going to kick things off with a slightly different topic. That's more of a business in general type topic, which is leadership, and in particular leadership traits. Okay, now for those of you that have studied this stuff, you know that there are no such thing as leadership traits. They had thinking in the 1950s and earlier, and they thought that, okay, there's a list of traits that people can have that would indicate that they'd be good leaders, right? And the problem is that when they tried to define that list of traits, they couldn't do that because just when you think you've got it pinned down, you always find an example of a great leader who doesn't have that trait. So even like more obvious things like, okay, you would need to be tall or something, to be a leader. You get someone like Napoleon, right? Napoleon was regarded as being short, and he conquered most of Europe. I mean, you know what I mean? There's no question that Napoleon was a great leader. You had to be sort of assertive and aggressive. You might think that would be a trait of leadership. To be a good leader, you have to be assertive and aggressive and forceful to a degree. And then you have someone like Gandhi, right, who most decidedly wasn't forceful and aggressive. So just when you think you've got it pinned down, what about having a lot of personal charisma? You have to be an extremely cool and likable person that people would look up to on a personal basis. Surely that must be a leadership trait that every leader should have, right? Well, as it turns out, no. People like Bill Gates and Orville Redenbacher, and I'm sure there's many others, kind of break that mold. You don't have to be a super cool person that people look up to on a personal basis, to be a great leader. So this was the problem. So what they found in the 1960s was they threw that theory out the window, and we have the theory that we have ever since, which is there is no defining list of traits that a leader should have in order to be a leader, right? This is what we've known for a very long time. Now, the implications of this are what makes it interesting, and that is that, you see, before when they thought that, in order to be a leader, you had to have certain things, the implication was that leaders were born. You just had to have these. And if you didn't have them, well, sorry, you just couldn't ever be regarded as a leader that people would look up to and be influenced by. But the implications of the fact that there is no trait of leaders was that leaders can be made. That means you can take anyone that has their natural traits and things that you can learn. But the important thing here is that anyone with their natural traits, and you could make them a leader. They could become a leader. There's nothing that they need specifically that they have to be born with that will decide if they're a leader or not. So that's the modern theory of leadership. That's what we've had since the 1960s. Okay. And there you go. So I'm sure you found that absolutely fascinating. Hopefully that is going to frame our discussion for today. And this is something that, does it relate directly to how to start a business? No. It kind of relates indirectly in the sense that, if you're wondering if you can do it, if you have what it takes, it kind of plays to that. But this is something I wanted to talk about anyway. Something that amazes me on a recurring basis is how we are fooled, how smart people are fooled by the kind of crap we're going to be talking about today. High-profile examples of fraud and deception, people that are not brilliant, they are actually imposters, but they manage to fool intelligent people into thinking that they have the answers just by assuming certain traits. So let's dive into this. Hopefully you guys know of some of these examples. I imagine you would, or else it'd be strange that you're here listening all about it. Let's talk about 3 high-profile cases of this. In the beginning, okay, I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't think these are in order. I'm going to talk to them, speak to them in the order that I wrote some notes down. You guys might remember Theranos. Theranos was a company that was founded, I believe it was in California, and it was a sort of high-profile example of fraud, right? There was a company. Here was a company that was founded by a couple of people, but in particular, a young, attractive female student. I think she went to Stanford. And so Stanford's kind of like the tech university. It's the one that's attached to, is it Silicon Valley? It's in Silicon Valley, I believe. And so, they have a lot of ties between that university and a lot of investors, right? Venture capital, this kind of stuff. So, like I think, for example, the founders of Google went to Stanford. So many people went to Stanford. So here was another one. And outwardly, she did everything right. She looked like, she knew what she was doing. She sounded like she knew what she was doing, and said all the right things. And she was young and pretty and everything. So a lot of people invested in her company. And there's been a lot of internet memes about how she changed her voice. She had a regular voice. Being female, her voice was a higher pitched voice, right? But she got it into her head that she had to fake a low register when she talked. So she would talk quietly and she would have its deep voice. And she theorized, or it turned out this way, that everyone would take her seriously if she talked like that. She started wearing Steve Jobs turtlenecks. So she looked like a female Steve Jobs in a way, just, superficially. And all these high-profile companies invested in her company, Theranos. And what they did is they did blood analysis. So they worked with the medical industry. And, when you go to the hospital and they can do they take your blood and they do like an analysis on it and see what's in your blood and determine if you're healthy or not. She claimed that her and her compadres had invented some kind of new technology where you didn't need to take like a giant vial of blood. You could just do it from one drop. So you could just prick your finger and take one drop of blood, and then you could run all these tests just on that one drop of blood. And it would happen very quickly in real time, and you could get, data back immediately that said, if you had a heart condition or cancer or something like that. So like revolutionary if it worked, right? Of course, it didn't work. It was all fraud, right? And before this was discovered, she managed to fool a lot of people into investing a lot of money with her companies. She was on the cover of all kinds of highly regarded magazines, and hailed as like the next Steve Jobs and the next, kind of visionary type tech entrepreneur. And it was all revealed to be a hoax, right? It was all a cruel hoax, I tell you. And she was discredited, and her company imploded. They went bankrupt, and she was brought up on criminal charges and was, I believe, convicted, if I'm not mistaken. She was convicted. Her company ended in 2018, and she was convicted in 2022. And then I believe she served some hard time breaking rocks with a ball on a chain around your ankle, that kind of thing. So that was Elizabeth Holmes. And the big question that everybody asked after was, how could everyone have been so stupid to be fooled by this person? She was an amateur. This technology didn't work at all. None of the claims were true. They are easy to prove that they are not true, but yet the whole world, the media that surrounds tech coverage and investment. A lot of high rollers, big investors, institutional investors were all apparently fooled by this, right? How could they have been so stupid, so blinded by, how amazing this person looked and sounded, and not done any of their due diligence, not had any corporate governance practices in place? How did that happen, right? So that was the question everybody asked at the time. And you might think this is an isolated incident, but no, as a group, we keep getting exceptionally, making exceptional blunders, and this is a regular thing. If you go back a couple of years, there was another high-profile case. This was WeWork. And once again, this became a meme, right? Like afterwards. This company was founded, it was founded quite a while ago, like in 2010 or something, but it blew up relatively recently. There were problems with it, starting about 5 years ago, and then it sort of, I believe it kind of ended only very recently. So WeWork, similar idea. It was founded by a guy called Adam Newman. And Adam Newman was this incredibly good-looking guy, young guy in his 20s. Just like Elizabeth Holmes, he said all the right things. He sounded really good, physically very attractive, was very charismatic on a personal level. And he managed to wow the world of investors and get them to invest in his company, WeWork, which it had something to do with office space, flexible office space. So the idea was that if you are a young company and you needed office space and it had to be kind of flexible, you start off with a cubicle and then you want a little more and then a little more and then maybe a whole office, you could go to this company and they would be able to hook you up and it would be dynamic, and they would provide these sexy kind of cool spaces where you have high-speed internet and, it looks kind of modern design and young and hip for young people and whatever that means, right? And I don't know, the model just didn't work. It just didn't work. And it was unfortunate timing because right when that was sort of coming in, you had things like COVID. And as we all know, when COVID hit, people stayed at home. They did not go to offices. So the demand for office space just fell off a cliff, right? So anyway, on top of that, this guy that founded the company, Adam Newman, anyway, he lived a very lavish lifestyle, and he was a bit of an oddball. He did some extreme kind of things, like they would host business meetings with open bars, so everybody would get completely plastered at these shareholders meetings and things like this. So it was a bit of a spectacle and a bit newsworthy, and it just seemed really, really unprofessional from the outside. It seems like you got this young person who doesn't have a clue what they're doing. They're partying all the time and they're not taking it seriously. But for some reason, they're getting billions of dollars of investment from some of the highest profile investors around the world, including a high profile company called SoftBank. And the founder of SoftBank kind of took this guy under his wing and lent him I think it was at least $1 billion. Just here, I'm going to give you $1 billion of investment for WeWork, because I believe in you. Anyway, it turned out to be basically a fraud, basically an exaggeration. The company went bankrupt finally in 2023, but Adam Newman was sort of disgraced and drummed out of the company a few years before that. But once again, we got taken in by a young, charismatic, attractive person that talks big. They position themselves like a visionary. How could these amateurs fool supposedly very wise, very conservative, very knowledgeable investors on such a grand scale? And not just investors, the media, everybody, the public, you name it. So I'm going to give one last example. This is probably the example I'm the least familiar with, but it's the most recent. This is FTX. Now, you guys might have heard of FTX. This is cryptocurrency. Okay, this was a cryptocurrency exchange. This only happened recently. It went down just in the last couple of years. So FTX was a company, it was founded by a guy called Sam Bankman-Fried, if I'm saying that right. Not a very sort of show-busy type name, but he abbreviated his name. He called himself like SNF or something like that. You know, that's the first sign of megalomania, by the way. I've known several people, including a billionaire, that did that. So I don't know if that's a red flag in itself. But anyway, sort of positioned this company as highly successful, and they did the standard thing that they always do. They borrow money and then claim to have made that money. You know, you can wrap that concept up in a variety of fancy terms, you know, but it's basically just that simple. You know, it's almost like a Ponzi scheme. Ponzi schemes are the same thing. You know, you don't really borrow money from a bank, but you borrow it in the sense that you get it from new customers, and then you claim that, you know, this money isn't from new customers, you made it, right? So when accountants look at what you're doing, they see you with lots of money and they assume that you made that money, and you're telling everyone, yeah, I made it because I'm smart. Really, you just borrowed it, right? Now, you would think that this would be so transparent, right? But no, everybody was fooled by this. Like, we're talking everybody, even like high-level bankers, everybody, you know? So FTX was like this huge scandal. They committed fraud, misuse of funds. It sparked, as it always does, the debate on having stricter regulations for the financial industry, which most reasonable people agree that is a good thing. When you tell bankers and people with money that there are no rules, you can do whatever you want, well, bad things happen. There's a lot of fraud. There's a lot of people stealing your money and telling you one thing but doing another because there's no rules, you know? Insurance companies, you pay them money on the assumption that they will cover you if the bad thing happens you're insured against. But if there's no rules, they don't have to. You know, you pay the money for years, and then once your house burns down, you go to your fire insurance company and you say, my house burns down, I'm insured for $2 million, can I have my money? And they say, whoops, we've just gone bankrupt, goodbye. And they get away with it. You know, so this was a big thing recently with FTX. And once again, if you look at the people involved, like this Sam Bankman-Fried, I don't think it's fried, but it should have been called fried. You get the same traits, you know, big talk, positioning themselves as a genius or a visionary, thinking big, talking big. They looked really perfect. They said all the right things. And in the case of this guy, they hung out with a lot of celebrities and other people that, you know, high profile people. So it was almost like validity by association. If I hang out next to Bill Gates and Michael Jordan and, you know, all these kind of celebrities, Taylor Swift, it looks like I'm a high roller, celebrity, important person too, right? When in reality, you're not. You're just a faker. You're just someone who claims to be important and weasels their way in. And all of a sudden, you're enjoying the credibility and respect that these people have because you hang out with them, right? So these are three high-profile examples. Now, I've seen this stuff on a smaller level. I see that Alicia is here. No invention developed that fast. Yeah, that was part of it. You know, it was all big talk. And Sandra says, Sam Bankman-Fried. Yes, I'm sure a lot of you guys have followed this stuff in the media a lot closer than I have. I would not be surprised. But yeah, that's the guy. So these are high-profile examples. Now, I've seen this a lot on smaller profile stuff, local stuff, where investors and high-net-worth individuals, they invest in startups and things like this. You know, someone wants to start a company, and they tend to connect locally with high-net-worth individuals, people like doctors and stuff like that. Where I am, there's a very, very small amount of like actual investment in this kind of stuff, but it's so negligible. So people do it in a very organic way where you just connect with high net worth individuals and you convince them, instead of putting their money in the bank, you know, they should maybe, you know, own a part of your little startup, right? And this is exciting for them. They live vicariously through you and their money, you know? So for them, that's the incentive. And for you, obviously, You get some startup capital or whatever you're looking for, right? And you get the same principles that apply. Some people that they talk a good game, they're very extrovert, very connected, very charismatic. They're physically very good looking. They say all the right things. They position themselves as a visionary or a genius or, someone that has big plans. And it's all for naught. It's all crap because they can't do anything and they've never done anything, And it boggles the mind, at least it boggles my mind, how these people, can convince investors to take a chance on them. And it's not like the investors recognize the real risk here. They have the wool pulled over their eyes, So it's amazing to me how we can be fooled by this over and over and over again as humans, that for all everybody's training and everybody's wisdom, they can't look beyond the window dressing to actually take a look at the person's track record, take a look at, what they're doing, what they have done with this thing that they're claiming, and make an objective decision. God knows on this channel, I talk about things like job interviews where they're assessing you and they're looking at your track record and they're looking at your education and their background. And then they're testing that by asking you questions about it with aptitude tests and skill testing questions. And then they ask all kinds of sort of personal, social type questions to try and assess your personality and whether you're equipped, on a personal level to do the job that's in question. So God knows they do their due diligence with that, even if it's like largely ineffective. They try, and they make you jump through all kinds of hoops. It's amazing to me that we don't apply this at a higher level now that there's, tens to hundreds of billions of dollars or billions of dollars at stake. We're going to invest in someone because we believe in them. It's ridiculous. And it's something that I don't see in any other area of business. When they hire executives, for example, they don't trust them on anything like this level. They demand that they have accomplishments that are well known and that they can easily verify, And that's for like an executive level, like a mid-sized company. That's nowhere near the scale of this kind of stuff. Turns out that, for some high-level stuff here, we throw all those checks and balances right out the window. So I'm going to open it up. So what traits do you guys think? What enables people to be fooled by this kind of thing? I got my own theories I can go into, but before I do, I'd like to throw that question out to you guys. Why does this happen? We've talked about some high-profile examples, but this happens at every level all the time, including at the low level, right? Why do we behave like this? Are we that stupid? Let me know. Miss K is here. Miss K says, "What's up, expert?" Not much, Miss K. It's Monday. It's actually a holiday where I am right now, but I'm here doing this anyway for a sense of continuity. Let's leave it at that. JC Denton says, "Zach Prince and Flory Marquez from BlockFi also struck me as dishonest, similar to FTX." Yeah, I mean, I'm not familiar with those, but that's not saying much. I don't really pay attention to this kind of stuff in the news. I'm sure there's a ton of examples of this. I'm sure you guys could come up with a lot more too. Alicia M says, "Hype, yes, that's part of it." But I mean, how do you get hype? Like if you were to get on social networking and start hyping something by communicating something you've done or a claim that you have, right? Is that the same? Are these people doing anything different? What are they doing different than you trying to hype something? That makes them successful, that makes people take them seriously and believe them, whereas they wouldn't believe you or me. Tech Programmer says, "Would you say 6 months is too short to leave a job?" Oh, we're talking about jobs. Okay, well, I'll leave that for another discussion. And yes, it probably is in most situations. Alicia says, "And connection." Yes, that's more like it. It's that association, right? And I've talked about on this channel quite a lot about the power of networking and how, a lot of people can use networking to find a job, for example. Here is an example where maybe that reveals a lot more of how these people get credibility, right? because they tend to be extrovert. They tend to be very, not only charismatic, but they tend to be able to network with all the right people. I mean, it helps that, you're coming from Stanford and things. You're already in the bright center of this world, so you're rubbing shoulders with all kinds of people that are well known, so it's not that hard to do. Miss K says, what was the question? I missed it. My general question is, how do smart people get taken in by these fraudsters, these people that exhibit certain traits that apparently we know we shouldn't just pay attention to those, but we do anyway. And next thing you know, we're a part of their fraud, their false claims, and we get taken for a ride. That's what I'm throwing out there. Alicia says, the audience is not knowledgeable. Yeah, people are dumb, but not everyone is dumb. People that should know better. Like, for example, like I mentioned, in the case of WeWork and Adam Neumann, somebody who took him under his wing that really believed in him falsely was the CEO of SoftBank that invested $1 billion in Adam Neumann and his company WeWork. The guy's name is Masayoshi Son. That's the guy. And I believe he was disgraced after this because he pumped all this money into WeWork, even when the alarm bells were ringing and people were talking about how, like, this is too good to be true. This smells bad. Like, it looks like there's really some fraud going on. He kept, investing and publicly showing his confidence in WeWork and Adam Neumann. This guy was in charge of like a major corporation, and he had all the credentials that you would want for someone in that position, Yeah, Stanford. Yeah, exactly. Alicia M says, not dumb, and they do not do research on the topic. Yeah, well, exactly. That's the thing. They just throw all their due diligence that they normally do out the window, right? Just lazy. Okay, that could be part of it, sure. Alexa says, also, Holmes had a lot of irrelevant but important people backing her. You see, once again, it's that credibility by association. Ambassadors, etc., red flag. Therefore, is backing that is not in the area of expertise of the company. Yeah, there you go. You see, like, okay, I think you're onto something there. You have people backing you, but those people are not experts in the area that that you're supposedly doing something amazing in. So how would they know, right? And I imagine it's a positive feedback loop. So the more of those you get, the easier it is to get more of them. Love You says, misaligned charisma mistaken for character and sense of authenticity. Yeah, personally, I don't know what it is. I've always had this thing where like this is a well-known thing. People that are very attractive, they have a lot of things going for them on a personal level. They live in a bit of a bubble. This is well known. They're just used to getting privilege. They're used to everybody believing what they say. They're used to everybody being nice to them. For us regular Joes who are a little more funny looking, we don't get that kind of treatment. People will trust us less and need us to justify ourselves more. And it will be a much harder journey for them to give you a lot of credibility and back you, Now, this is well known. It's the stereotypical smiling salesperson, that's trying to get you to buy something, right? And it's a well-known thing. And, in the world of what I'm talking about here, which is, small scale business, whether it's small business or an innovative type startup, it's the same thing. If you're looking for investors to back you, what's the first thing you do? You look at who this person is. You look at their track record, Now, if they've never done anything at all, usually that's a red flag. You don't just give somebody a credible amount of money, on faith when they've never, ever done anything. Usually, it's a progression. If you have a great idea and you have the ability to get it off the ground, well, you'll have done something on some small scale before. Maybe even in school you did really well, or you went above and beyond, or you had an original idea that was innovative and you pushed it through the completion and it bore fruit and everybody saw it. You'll have something in your past and it will be a progression of increasing scale, But no, these people hadn't done anything and they were just believed, by the supposed experts. But I agree with you guys. A lot of the things you're saying, I agree. That's part of it. Miss K says there are many reasons people want many benefits for small effort. Yes, it's a too good to be true kind of thing. They want to believe that it's true. That's definitely a factor going on here. Even when smart, they think they know more than they really do. Yeah, that's for sure. Sometimes it's also greed, desperation, or just guard letdown. Yes. I would argue that it's a mix of all of those. It's really the same story in politics. Yeah, that's okay, but I don't want to go into politics. That's a little bit of a different thing. So here's kind of what I would say. Here's some traits that I think all these examples have in common. Okay, for example, for start, charisma. Okay, including physical attractiveness. That really helps. People tend to believe what you say. People tend to buy what you're selling, figuratively. When you just look fantastic. This is well known, by the way. They've studied this in business in the area of organizational theory, right? If you ever want to learn business, by the way, check out my course because it goes into that. But it's in the area of organizational theory, they've one of the things that they study is like where power comes from, right? What is power? It's the ability to get other people to behave the way you would have them behave. So if you're looking for an investor to back you, you want them to want to back you. That's the behavior you're trying to get. So if you have power, you can get them to do this. And they've analyzed all this to the nth degree, and they've here are the sources of power, which you have to bargain with. And one of them is access to like a circle of friends. You want to be in the in crowd, just like high school or back at high school, And so if you look fantastic and, everybody likes you, you want to be accepted into that group. That's a desire that humans have. So partly they're preying on that syndrome, right? It makes people want to say yes to them, so you'll be working on the inside of their little group. And that's where you want to be. Selling a bold, high-level vision. That's another thing they had in common. This is where people totally fail to look at their track record. Yeah, you can have a bold vision, but are you likely to be able to pull it off? Well, the obvious predictor is, have you done this kind of thing before? If you've done it before, I don't think anyone's going to argue with you that you could do it, right? But no, these people hadn't done anything remotely like it before. Big red flag. We talked about success by association, hanging out with celebrity friends. Just because you're hanging out with these people, it looks like you're a somebody. So people would be more inclined to believe you. Extreme confidence. Like, that's another thing that, I don't know, it sends off red flags for me. Most people, when they get older, wiser, they tend to be good at what they do because they've had a lifetime of experience. They tend to be more conservative. And speaking from my own experience, all I can say is that derives from a sense of, wow, I'm the opposite of what I was in my 20s. In my 20s, I thought I knew it all, and I thought I could do anything. And a lifetime of experience has taught me that I really don't know it all, and I really can't do anything. I've been successful a few times, and so I've become very conservative. I've been very wary of going outside of like the things I feel I know because I don't know it all, and I failed enough times to expect that as a real possibility. So therefore, I stick to the things I know, and I'm very, very cautious about it. That's, the progression you get. It's the opposite of the idealism of youth, right? Most people in their 20s, They feel invincible. They feel like they know everything. They're smarter than everyone. They can do anything, right? And then usually people in their 30s, that's when they fail a few times on different levels. And then you pop the balloon. You don't have that sort of idealism where you think you can do anything. You're a bit more grounded. You know, it's not a question of like not believing in yourself, but you're like, okay, I know what I can do and I know what can go wrong now. So I'm a bit more wary of that because I've experienced it a few times. I have a respect for it, right? So that's the weird thing for me. When you have people that are young and they, you know, they're very, they throw caution to the wind, they take a lot of risks. Usually from the perspective of older, wiser people, that's a big red flag. You know? So that's definitely a part of like these high profile cases. These people were like risk takers in the sense that they were reckless. It isn't something to look up to and admire. It's not. It's reckless. You know? Ask any banker. You know what I mean? Sometimes things go up, sometimes things go down. You can't predict, you know? It's good to hedge your bets. It's good to be cautious about things. That's the strategy that tends to win out when we look at real world results. You know, and they were also riding trends and hype, right? That was part of it. So these were all things. It was very trendy to do this, so they jumped on the bandwagon. Everybody was already amenable to that kind of thing, thinking it's a success. So that also was a factor. Miss K says, people tend to buy into lies big enough to inspire them, but small enough not to sound like a green unicorn of a promise. Yeah, or in this case, like really, really big lies that, you know, they were big enough, like the first part is correct, but they weren't small enough to do that. It was just blatant false claims on a grand scale. You know, I mean, I'm an old guy. I remember Enron, you know, like people today, I'm sure, don't remember Enron, but it was like the same kind of thing. The stuff that always happens, people making bold claims, you know, and then looking like they're untouchable, you know, looking like they can do no wrong. And so everybody will just follow them and they'll lead everyone into the abyss, you know? Same thing. So I don't know what the end result is. What do you guys think is like the single biggest factor that fools people and allows these people to get away with what they're doing? It allows them to fool smart people into doing reckless things that are false. It's a fraud. Alicia says, I did my MBA. Yeah, okay, well, you will know. Oh, Enron. Okay, Enron was a special case. Well, yeah, it's a special case in the sense that it was fraud, but it's not so special in the grand scheme of things in that it keeps happening over and over again, right? The three examples I went into today are like just another modern version of Enron. You want to believe it because it turns out it's too good to be true, but you don't want to believe that, you know? And, you know, the weird thing for me about Enron is that you can almost understand how they did it. Like, it wasn't this blatant, like, okay, we're going to fool the world. Let's plan and, you know, conspire together. It was more like, well, we're going to cheat a little bit, but don't worry. Next month, we'll fix that. You know, this is just until next month. And then, you know, we don't have to cheat anymore. But then next month, you have to cheat a little more to maintain the lie. And then more, and then more. So you end up like falling into this abyss. And it's not something you planned, it just sort of evolved. And maybe I'm being too kind, but that's how it seemed. And it almost makes it even more dangerous because you could see how you could fall into that too. It starts with little things, you know, not this grandiose deception plan. The whole cryptocurrency stuff. Yeah, you know, it's interesting. I have a master's degree in finance, but I got my master's degree in finance before cryptocurrency really hit and became a thing. And, you know, you would think I would understand cryptocurrency and, you know, be able to sort through some of the noise you hear about it. But I don't. I just stay away from it because whenever I hear about it, it's always extremely fishy. That's just been my personal experience. For example, I will get nuisance comments on the videos in this YouTube channel. Like these comments that are posted by bots, and they're always for like Binance or some cryptocurrency thing. And it's like, that's the way I always encounter cryptocurrency. It's always like some questionable, underhanded thing, that doesn't feel right. It feels like a scam. It feels like a sordid kind of thing. So I've just never had a desire to like investigate it more. And it seems like I'm not the only one that feels that way. There's a lot of people that are sort of touting it, and there's an equal number of people, I think, that are just really warning you to stay away from it. So, I mean, at the end of the day, there's no desire to really check it out more. I don't know what you guys think about it. But yeah, so this is the thing, at the end of the day, I think introverts and technical people have a great advantage in that at least we feel that we can see through a lot of these types of traits. People that are very good looking, people that are, saying and all the right things. They look fantastic. They're hanging out with people that we might admire. Because of our own experiences in life, we like to think that we can see through that, A lot more so than, say, extroverts, salespeople types who are used to more networking and, caring about other people's opinions about us and, getting acceptance into larger groups and stuff like that. I'd like to think that introverts and technical people have a little bit more resistance to it. I don't know if that's true. I'd like to believe that, but I'm not sure. I've seen all kinds with local like investors and stuff and startups. I've seen all kinds of people fail, and I've seen all kinds of people almost like engage in underhanded behavior to try and get further ahead. And that includes introverts, extroverts, everybody, So I guess if there is a theme for this, it's to remain vigilant and not be fooled by these people, There's a thing called due diligence. That means do what's reasonable to check something out before you just jump on board. Engage in critical thinking skills. Test, people's claims, and look for evidence, hard evidence. Not opinions, not appearances, hard evidence. That's traditionally what investors do, and never deviate from that. Why did I say it like that? Never deviate from that. There you go. Anyway, hopefully you find this semi-interesting. Let me know what your thoughts are in the chat. That's really all I have planned to say today. So I'm going to completely open it up to your comments and questions. I see there's 36 people here. Thank you for joining me today. You guys are awesome. We're here to discuss this stuff. If you want to, I hate this term, but if you want to be a leader, what that means is you want to try and influence people. I regard that the most practical sense in terms of you want to manage people. Okay? Or in the context of business, you want to sell. You want to influence customers to buy what you're selling. And that includes, sort of trying to woo investors. If you're wanting to do that, right? What are the lessons from this? It's always the thing that no one wants to admit, which is that we are fascinated by cases like this because part of us wants to learn what their secrets were to get such influence in the first place, right? You study people that have been very effective at this, even if they've been bad people, just to see what techniques they're using. Because you think you can glean some lesson from it that you could put into practice and it would reap you some benefit, Ray says, last time I interviewed for jobs was years ago and I also looked very young for my age. I'm worried if it would have any effect on how people judge me. Well, so years ago you looked young for your age. Do you still look young for your age? Maybe things have balanced out now. I'm not sure. Look, I don't know. I mean, it depends what they're looking for. If I'm assuming that you're not abnormal and you don't look like you're 8, you know what I mean? Like, you're not like 40, but you look 8, or, you're 50, but you look 12. I'm assuming it's within like normal kind of parameters. I don't think that is something you really need to concern yourself with too much. The problem is with these kind of encounters, it's all first impressions, right? Once people get to know you, and if you know your stuff, none of this matters. It's just the initial first impression. So if their first impression is going to be, oh, you're too young, you can't possibly know what to do, right? You would want to compensate for that by like demonstrating that you know what to do. Don't be fooled by my looks or whatever. I actually know my stuff, as is age appropriate. Tech programmer says, do you find Bitcoin and crypto a scam? I don't have an opinion. I never checked it out. But what I'm saying is that I have heard a lot of, like, when I've interacted and heard about that stuff, some of the stuff I've heard is quite a bit fishy. Now, whether that's just noise or that's not representative of it, I have no idea, because I've never investigated it further. The guy with a bow tie says, please keep warm. I know how cold it is in Winnipeg today. Yeah, to be perfectly honest, I'd rather be in a cold climate than, say, be in like places like Florida and Texas. I mean, I absolutely can't stand the heat, but I don't mind the cold. Maybe it has something to do with my physique. I'm not sure. Just pass me a donut and turn up the air conditioning, But no, it's cold, but it gets colder. It's not as cold as if you go further north. You go up into the Arctic, and it gets even colder. You go to the Antarctic, it gets even colder. I feel sorry for those people at the South Pole Station. You want to talk cold? I think they would tell you and me, both of us, about cold. And they'd call us college boy when they talk about it. Let me tell you about cold, college boy. When I was your age, I walked to the Antarctic station there and back every day uphill. It's something like minus 29 degrees Celsius. So I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit. But yeah, J.C. Denton says, maybe it's because I am an extreme introvert, but I get suspicious of people who are very friendly right off the bat to me. Well, then we all know the way around you. We'll just greet you with an insult and talk about how, they hate your shoes. And you'll latch on to them. I don't know. No, I'm just joking, of course. Listen, I kind of agree. I can see that, because you yourself may not place a lot of value in that stuff. When you see other people exhibiting that stuff, it doesn't, or we'd like to think it doesn't work as effectively on us. It's like, I don't respect people because they look fantastic or sound fantastic. I respect people because of what they've done, what the results have been. The problem is that, once again, we're dealing with first impressions, and first impressions really muddy the water, because you can't see any of the stuff in a first impression. The only thing you see in front of you is someone who looks really good, who's maybe smiling at you and, acting very persuasive. That's all you see. Now, how do you interpret that? If you just conclude that they're a jackass and you don't want anything to do with them right off the bat, that might not be, the greatest thing, because you'd probably be selling that person short. So each to their own on that one, I guess. But that's one way of handling it. You just push everyone away that sort of falls into that category, and then you won't be suckered in by it. It's one way of doing it. But I mean, people experience this with their bosses. If you've ever gotten a new boss or something, like, just say you work at a day job and you get a new boss, and it's someone that is very, very charismatic, very, very, touchy-feely. They're a people person. They invite you into their office, and they're all, concerned, and they're all friendly. And, I've had that a few times where that person turned out to be like totally incompetent, and a terrible boss, because you end up seeing through that facade after a while. They're all talk. When it comes down to any kind of ability to do anything, they're useless, right? I've seen other people that they walk the talk. they seem really wonderful, but then they turn out to actually know what they're doing and exhibit better, more important traits. Like they'll back you up and they won't be two-faced, and they do what they say, and they're reliable and all this kind of stuff. So I mean, it can go both ways, But yeah. Anyway, we've reached the end of the chat. Get in the chat. Let me know what your thoughts are. I find this stuff kind of interesting. I find the fact that people are fooled by this stuff really interesting. I can see them fooling a lot of quote unquote dumb people. What's impressive to me is that they fooled some people that are really smart, like really high level rich people that they're in the business of investing wisely, and they've been very successful at it. So to fool them, that's quite a feat. It really seems like they're not smart enough to be able to do something like that. So it's a paradox of how they managed to pull it off. To me. I don't know what you guys think of it. But yeah, it brings up, for me, it also brings up the debate of extrovert versus introvert. A lot of people that get promoted into areas where they're managing people, let's face it, they tend to be extrovert. It doesn't mean that introverts don't get promotions. Then they're not put in charge of people. Obviously they do, especially in places like operations or, the legal department. You do get that. But in most other areas, what you see is that extroverts have a little bit of an advantage. If you look at who's being promoted, it's mainly extroverts. Now, I tend to believe it's because extroverts tend to be more tuned into things like networking, which places them in a position where they're the more likely candidate to be promoted. They're not promoted because they're extroverts. They're promoted because they were known to the person, right? So you end up promoting them, but they may not be the best equipped. Miss K says, all right, got a question if we talk about traits. Yes, let's talk about traits. I explained at the beginning of this live stream that in the 1950s and earlier, their theory of leadership was that leaders were born. There was a specific set of traits that leaders had, and they had to have. And if you just didn't have those, sorry, you couldn't be a leader. They've since disproven that theory. They disproved it in the 60s, in the 1960s, where they couldn't pin down the definitive list of traits just when you think you've got it solved. Like, for example, to be a leader, you have to be attractive, Was Winston Churchill attractive? Absolutely not. Just when you think you got this list of traits, every single one, you can find well-known examples of people that don't have that trait, but are still regarded as great leaders. Even things like intelligence, You would think, a leader has to be smart. They have to be above average intelligence. There's plenty of examples where that's not the case, So every single trait that they could come up with, they were all questioned. They were all shown to be optional. So therefore, there is no list of traits. Therefore, anybody can be a leader depending on what traits you're born with or what you have naturally, right? That was the implication. Leaders are made. And this is our modern theory of leadership. And it's being borne out ever since the 1960s, Guido, if I'm saying that right, says, I'm considering freelancing as a computer scientist. I'm quite adept in many domains, but I'm worried about the social aspect of it. Do you think introverts are generally less suited for freelancing? Well, as an introvert who is freelancing, I would say no. I mean, at a guess, anything that requires more social connections, one would expect extroverts to have an advantage. They have an advantage because they enjoy it more, and therefore they also have an advantage because they've done more of it, so they tend to be better at it, right? But if the theory is that, you will be at a disadvantage if you're an introvert, regardless who you are, I would say no. I would say introverts can do it. Less of them may want to do it or may want to do what it takes to do it, but they certainly can do it. One of the big themes of my channel, on this YouTube channel, is to try and connect with introverts and technical people and open their minds up to doing some more of this kind of extroverted activity, whether it's networking or, starting your own business and connecting with customers directly, right? As opposed to saying, I don't want to do that. I don't want to try and sell anything. I don't want to have to deal with customers. So I'm going to go and make a partnership with an existing company where they handle all that. And instead they just pay me for my contribution, right? That's what being an employee is. You don't make the money directly. The company makes the money, so you don't have to worry about that aspect. And instead, you accept like an agreement where they pay you, essentially a pittance for your value a lot of times, right? Now, if you were able to freelance, as you say, you're going to do the entire process. You're going to transform your value into cold hard cash directly by selling your services or products to customers, right? That means you have to take on the whole like business aspect of it and how to drum up business and get customers and all this, right? But you do that because then you keep all the pie, you keep all the money, right? So it's a legitimate sort of ambition. Many people do it, right? Many introverts do it. So first of all, it's definitely something that you can do if you really set this as a goal. It's a realistic goal to have. The flip side is that in order to learn how to do it, you need to learn how to do it. Like you can't just snap your fingers and all of a sudden you're a freelancer. You have to tack on some skills and some knowledge, and that will require some time, and it will require minor failures as you learn what works and what doesn't, for you in your situation, right? Now, a lot of people are not willing to go through that process, right? And so you could look at it as like you're investing in yourself. You're developing the skill where you are not dependent on an employer or any other intermediary to turn your value into income. You can do that yourself. You will never be in a situation where you have no money coming in because you know exactly how to transform your value into money, So no one can you're not dependent on a job and no one can lay you off, in which case you have no income, right? So it insulates you from that in large part, but you have to pay for that by learning how it's done. And that aspect is learning business. That's what business is. Business is the scientific study of making money, You could take a hobby that's like some creative artistic thing, right? Like you could look at, writing code as like a creative artistic thing. It's innovative, it's fun, you get to do new and exciting things, you get to do it your way. It's a creative thing, right? You're creating something that doesn't exist right now. You're creating something new, right? Even if it's something similar to what's existing right now, it's still new, right? But the moment you want to try and make money by a creative effort, now you have to learn more than just coding. You have to learn business. Business is the study of how to make money with something. It's basically the study of how to make something popular, right? So in a business context, money follows. It can also be applied to things like politics, like if you want to be elected or something. It's the same principles that you learn in marketing that you do in political science. They're very, very similar. It's like how to make something popular, how to have a hit on your hands, So for some people, that's the journey they want to go on, and that's perfect for them. Other people, it doesn't make sense for them. It's not really one of their goals to do that, and that's fine too. It depends what you're looking to do, But if it is a goal of yours, you can definitely achieve it if you go about it the right way. Okay, where did I leave off? So that was Guido, I believe, yeah. Miss K, from your experience, is psychopathy a virtue or a vice in business? Oh, it's absolutely a vice. As an internal emotional detachment from people, yeah. Okay, well, if we look at the clinical definition of psychopathy, and I know this because this has been discussed in business circles over the years. It rears its ugly head every 10 years. it's definitely a disadvantage. The problem is that it's short-term gain for long-term failure, So it's the short-term gain that's like very tempting. For some people in some situations, they think like, oh, I want that. But the problem is they want that without all the stuff that inherently comes with it, which is all negative, right? For example, like trying to get a psychopath to work for you, they won't work for you. They're only going to work for themselves ever. Like that's one major problem with it, So although it seems like, wow, I wish I had the ability to be that detached from unpleasant things I got to do, that's would be kind of fantasy land. I wouldn't have a problem going through some of the negative things I have to do. But the problem is it doesn't work like that. It comes with all these other things. It's just a package, and the package is ultimately very bad, That's why you end up hearing about it, because it's usually something that blew up in someone's face and a lot of bad things happened, and that's why it's newsworthy. That's why we're hearing about it, Amber says, what leadership roles do you think are best suited for introverts? All kinds. Look, okay, the obvious thing is if you are not into dealing with people because you don't enjoy it in general, okay? That would describe a lot of introverts. You could be something like a project manager. You can manage projects, or you can manage money, or you can manage assets. You're dealing with more technical stuff rather than dealing with people all the time, right? So that's the obvious kind of area, where you can be a leader in the sense that, you have a lot of responsibility. People look up to you, where your opinion matters and your talents are well regarded. Okay. But if you're talking about leadership in the strict sense where you're dealing with people, okay, learn how to learn leadership in a business context, because once you realize how it actually works, it's actually not this huge negative, fearful thing that people sometimes might think it is. I'm going to turn up my camera brightness because I've got a thing for bright cameras for some reason. Maybe it's pathological. I think something happened to my camera, actually. It's super dark for some reason. Anyway, for example, here's the thing. Extroverts may enjoy that type of activity, but that doesn't mean that they're better at it. And a very well-known, like an open secret, is that everyone gets along very well with people who are just like them, right? So if you're a technical introvert, you could probably get along really well with a technical introvert, right? You'd probably get along less well with a person who's the opposite, some salesperson, extroverted salesperson. You would have a hard time interoperating with them, communicating with them, collaborating with them. Right? But that works across the board. Just because you get a boss and the boss is very extroverted, does that mean that they're very good at getting along with technical introverts? No, it doesn't. Not by a long shot. Because technical introverts are completely different to them. And so they don't understand them intrinsically, inherently. You have to be taught how those people think and how their brain works and how they perceive things. And once you know that, then you can understand how you would deal with them, how you would influence them, how you would inspire them, how you would persuade them. You know what I mean? Because their brains think differently than you do. What you think is persuasive to them, they don't find it persuasive at all. And everyone has this problem. So whoever you are, you have this problem. You can get along with people that are exactly like you, but you have challenges getting along with people who don't behave like you. They have different personalities, different backgrounds, if you're an engineer, how do you get buddy-buddy with a salesperson? How do you really speak to them in a way that inspires them and convinces them? You wouldn't have the first clue how to do that unless you were taught, because it doesn't come naturally. And vice versa also applies, right? So my point is that whoever you are, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, you would have to learn the same amount of stuff to be effective, because you're going to encounter every type of person. And you have to be good at relating to and influencing every type of person. You know? And as you climb higher and higher, you get less sort of functional teams and more cross-functional teams. So the people you're going to be interacting are going to be more and more like a good cross-section of every type of person. At the low level, you know, you might only deal with a certain type of person, one type, because you all work in this department and you all have a similar personality that's suited to that. That's fine. You can just be that type of personality yourself. You can understand all the people under you in that department, and that's fine. But if you want to go higher, now you're having to manage other types of people. You're going to have a cross-functional team under you, and you have to be able to relate to all of them. And that's where you have to tack on these abilities. So regardless of who you are, you have the same amount of work to do. Guido says, thanks, very thorough answer. Well, good. Adept. I actually had an idea for lead generation, but cold mailing in my country is considered illegal, so I would have to phone first, which is a little scary. Yeah, well, listen, this is the thing. This is what I like about business, okay? Because business is the real world. That means there's no rules. The only rules are like what's legal and illegal. So assuming you don't want to try and kill someone, you know, you can do anything. You know, as long as you're not committing a crime, you can do anything. You can talk to whoever you want. You can contact them any way you want. You can say anything you want. You know, you could go and show up at their door and like knock on the door, you know, and hey, you know, or you could just stay completely distant and just send an email, you know. There's no rules, right? Now, that being said, what is going to be effective and what's ineffective? That's obviously a major consideration. Another consideration is adapting what you do to your own strengths and weaknesses. So if you have an absolute phobia of talking to people on the phone, or talking to people you don't know on the phone, maybe you're okay talking to your close friends and family on the phone, but it's when you have to talk to a stranger on the phone that you got a problem, right? Well, you can customize what you do to tailor to your own strengths and weaknesses, right? So this is the magic of sort of like figuring out your sort of way of doing things, you know? Like, I'm a technical introvert, but I've done a lot of informational interviews. I've done a lot of networking, because when I do it on my own terms, I feel like I'm good at it and it seems to produce good results. I love informational interviews, especially when the person has invited you in. You've used remote stuff like LinkedIn to connect with people, set up interviews, and they've said, yes, come on down. I'd love to talk to you. So, okay, now that that's out of the way, I don't have a problem going and meeting that person, because I already know that they want to talk to me. They know exactly who I am, and they know kind of what I want to speak to them about. And they've said that's all okay, you know? So now that that's out of the way, I actually enjoy going and meeting them and talking to them. And I found that informational interviews are like a really cool thing. You get to meet new people. You get to learn all kinds of stuff from like real experts and people in high places. And it's actually surprisingly simple to do. You just ask them a series of questions about themselves, you know, and people love that. They love talking about themselves. They'll go on forever, you know. So that was like my personal thing that I found, right? It's like a nice mix of, I'm an introvert. I'm not, you know, I don't want to go up and force myself on people, but I can communicate. I can have great conversations. I can make people really enjoy speaking to me because I'm just talking basically about them, you know? That was my flavor. Now, that's not highly original, but the point is, this shows how you can customize what you do to your personality or your situation, you know? You know, so that's why you got to get out and try stuff. You got to like learn the theory and then start applying the theory. And some things will work, some things won't, but you gradually evolve to a place where you've found little things that work for you and that are effective. And at the end of the day, you can do it, you know? That's one of the reasons why I'm on YouTube so much, because I am an introvert and I like just being able to switch on a camera and, record a video or something. And I don't have to repeat myself in theory, because people can just keep watching the same video over and over again. I don't have to repeat myself for every single person that I want to communicate to. I think that's a really cool thing. I think school should be done like that, Where were we here? So hopefully that makes sense, Guido. Miss K says, Amber, maybe military leadership, not much massive social interaction, mostly circuit professional officers. Yeah, well, military leadership, I've never been in the military, so I'm looking at this from the outside, but it's very autocratic. It's very, there's different styles of leadership. That's one of them. And they all have pros and cons. So the pro of an autocratic style of leadership is that decisions are made very quickly. You're not debating things for a very long time. You get quick decisions. The problem is that all things being equal, they tend to be the least informed decisions because it's just one person's idea. What we found, for example, in the world of business is that, you have big organizations that do things that fail. Now, in that organization, there might be 100,000 employees in that organization, right? But if you study what's happened, what we find is that when the company sort of made this decision, we're going to do this, maybe the CEO says, I have a vision, ladies and gentlemen, and I see the success going forward deriving from this. So this is what we're going to do, right? And then they go ahead and do that, and it flops massively, right? Now, in that situation, what we always find is that this is not a surprise to a lot of the people in the organization. They saw this coming. They saw this failure coming from miles away, but they weren't listened to if they did have any concerns. If they did voice their concerns and say, I don't know if this is going to work for this practical reason, right? They were not listened to. They were just told, shut up, do what you're told, right? And by the way, sometimes they add, this concern of yours, you don't know what you're talking about. It was made by somebody up here who's a lot smarter than you, and they see the big picture, whereas you don't. So shut up and just trust that they know what they're talking about. Well, it turns out they didn't know what they were talking about. It was a complete disaster, and it failed for precisely the reason that these people said it would fail for before it occurred, right? So the question becomes, how could you have done things differently? And the answer, of course, is you need to take all that knowledge and experience from down here and bring it up so it's incorporated into the decisions that are made at a high level, right? Because if that had been mentioned at the table when they were deciding this, you wouldn't have had this massive multi-billion-dollar flop, So that becomes the question. So autocratic decisions are great in the sense that you can just make a decision like that and order people to just get it done. Sometimes that's what you need. Certainly in the military, where there isn't time to hand wring and discuss things at length, you just have to react. But other times, it's obviously a very flawed way of making a decision if it's supposed to be a very wise decision that predicts what's going to happen and gets it right, So there's many different types of leadership, many types of decision making, and they're all suited for different situations. So the good thing generally in business is to be aware of the different possibilities you have and then be able to recognize the situation you're in and then say, okay, based on all of this, this is how we should be, make decisions in this situation. And then you implement it. Miss K says, NGL. What does NGL mean? Oh, not gonna lie, I think. Don't use abbreviations with me. I'm not down on that stuff. It's not possible. I get comments from all over the world and people from every industry. So spell it out. Your ability to answer with an entire lecture to even a simple question is rather well, thank you. Some people would say that that's just motor mouth and long-windedness. But thank you for that compliment. I'm glad that it's working for you. Amber says, thanks for the response. I work in government, so I deal with the public a lot and have learned to be good at it. It just becomes mentally exhausting. Curious if something drains extroverts. Yeah, you see, like, listen, I don't have a ton of experience dealing with government. I've been a teacher in a university, so technically that's government, but I don't come from that world. I find that they have a completely different worldview from most situations I've been in, because I've been in the private sector my whole career. They have a completely different way of looking at the world, completely different value system, completely different playbook of how you operate, this kind of stuff. Same with like charities and stuff. It's different again, from both things I previously mentioned. They have a third way of looking at things and doing things in a different playbook. And it's like, I believe that they're all valid. You could learn something from each, It's not like each one of them has the right perspective and the others don't. They each have like certain things that they actually do a really good job on, and then certain other things that they fail at, But I'm not sure how you mix and match. I've never been able to do that. I've never really had the opportunity to do much of that. Unfortunately, I would have loved to do more of it. Yeah, like for most things, like the way they handle things in government would be the opposite of like how I would handle them. But when you look at the types of situations they're dealing with in government, like you say you deal with the public a lot, you would need to handle that differently than the situations you would have in the private sector. You know what I mean? So it justifies it. Yeah. Miss K says, your thoughts on essentialism versus constructivism. Those are two words I'm not familiar with. Some people just assume if you don't have a trait or skill since birth, or preferably your past life in ancient China, we'll never be good at it. Well, obviously that's not true. Like, I wasn't born with the ability to play piano, but I can learn and I can be an amazing concert pianist, Like, you know what I mean? You know what? I'm just going to quickly look up those two terms. I'm not down on all the isms. That's what we've done in modern times. We've sort of, given everything a name, and I'm not really down with a lot of the names. So, constructivism. I'm just going to look constructivism as I misspell it. Are you referring to constructivism? Yes, I am. Artistic architectural movement. Well, that's probably why I haven't heard of it. Avant-garde movement from the 20s that in Russia that emphasized geometric forms. Learning theory in education is a theory that suggests learners actively construct knowledge based on their experiences, critical thinking, and problem solving. Okay, here's where I reveal some of my biases. Okay, when I went to university as an instructor and I was teaching in the business programs, I was surrounded by, it seemed like a massive team of administrators, people that had master's degrees in education, but yet simultaneously couldn't speak publicly to save their lives. It was a real weird juxtaposition of things. And they had all these theories of education. Do you teach this way or that way? And they were very complex. And I didn't bother to learn any of them. But yet simultaneously, these are the people that sort of architected taking a lot of power out of the hands of teachers and forcing them to sort of follow an extremely specific curriculum, not just in what you teach, but how you teach and all this. And I found it almost completely ineffective. And whenever I deviated from it, that's when I got the best feedback from students. And there was a bit of a sort of a clash between me and some of the administrators because I refused to follow some of these modern theories. It's like, look, I think it's more inspiring to hire someone who knows what they're doing. They have expertise in a field, and yet they're just very good at communicating, and they have a real passion to teach. I think that's what's essential. I think that the more of these theories, at least that I've seen, my personal experience, the more that I've seen of them, the less effective they are, because they sound very clever, but I haven't seen a lot of practical good results. Not that that means much, but that's just my personal take on it. You learn best by relating it to experiences that you yourself have had. I mean, that has a certain logic, but you need more than just to have a certain logic to have it be valid, Maybe as it turns out that even though it makes sense, it's kind of unimportant in the grand scheme of things. Children start off not having experiences with most things, but does that hold them back? No, they learn that as a baby you have experience with nothing, and you're introduced to things that are new constantly. Should we shy away from that? Should we say you're going to be at a disadvantage because you've never done that before? To me, that smacks of a lot of modern theories of HR. When they say, oh, you have less years experience of this, therefore you'll never be as good as someone who has more. I think that's crap as a principle. I'm not sure what the data shows. Maybe it shows as a general tendency that's true. But then if you then use that to make a decision and say, we're going to hire this other person because they have more years of experience, that's where the fault lies. It turns out that the person you denied the job, that would have been the best candidate because they didn't have the years of experience, but they had the enthusiasm, or something, right? So I tend to be a bit suspicious of some of these more complex theories that really analyze things to the nth degree, especially with education. As it turns out, the best teachers that I've experienced are people that don't have a background in education. They have more natural abilities, So this is neither here nor there. It's a very layman type discussion about it, but I think that we have to be wary of getting too high level with this stuff. People that have no education, they've never been taught how to teach, some of those people can be fantastic teachers, whereas other people that have got master's degrees in how to teach turn out to be awful teachers. That's something I've noticed. So we got to be wary about taking this stuff a little too seriously. So I'm sorry if that might clash with maybe where you are in this, but that's kind of my theory based on my limited experiences. Miss K says, those are deep philosophical terms, but I refer to them mostly in terms of people. Yeah, okay, good. That's what I would agree with. Guido says, I guess the only trait that is essential is intelligence. It doesn't immediately hand you something, but as a baseline is really a requirement. Wrong. It turns out that that's not something that's universally matters. I'm sure you can think of influencers that are below average intelligence. Just like all the other traits, it's been shown to not be essential, right? Donald Trump, I don't know. I mean, hey, look at a lot of politicians. Are they above average intelligence? Are they really prescient, wise, highly educated, highly sharp people? I would say not. So I can't think of a great example to illustrate that right now, but if you sort of bone up on this stuff, they've disproven that one too. People can be very influential and be regarded as great leaders, but yet not be of extreme above average intelligence. I know this is the only thing I can think of. I mean, I know this is a terrible example because it's fictional, but someone like Forrest Gump, there's an example of someone who wasn't very bright, but people still looked up to them. Yes, it's a fiction, but they've proven it in real life. So, yeah. But all of those, like I said, you think you might need to be tall to be a really great leader. No, look at Napoleon. You want to be aggressive. No, look at Gandhi. You want to be extremely good looking, and people look up to you in that respect. No, look at Winston Churchill. You want to be really cool and fashionable and, that kind of thing. No, look at Bill Gates. I mean, they've disproven all of them. There's not a single trait that they've found that oh no, you absolutely must have this. Everyone must have that to be a leader. There is no such thing. That was what they showed in the 1960s. That's formed our modern theory of leadership. No trait is essential. Therefore, anybody can be a leader. You could be mentally disadvantaged. So you're not very bright. You don't score high on the intelligence tests, but you have the potential to be a highly regarded leader that a lot of people look up to you for and take their cue from you. You know, that's the implications. Miss K says, Pol Pot definitely wasn't intelligent, yet he got to carry out his nonsense. That's an extreme example. Yeah, I agree. And not a very nice guy either. Lots of bad things going on there. You could probably look at that from the sense of a lot of like dictators that commit a lot of atrocities and stuff. I'm sure you get the same thing. Anyway, hopefully that makes sense. We kind of strayed somewhat, but we've been talking about traits. We've been talking about leadership traits and why, you know, despite our best efforts, we get fooled by certain traits, it seems, over and over again. I guess the moral is to just be on your guard. And just because people have certain traits, like they're highly charismatic and they're, you know, they associate with people you look up to, like celebrities or something, you know, or they're very young and good looking and they're very cool, or, you know, whatever it is, don't be fooled by it. Don't be fooled by it. People keep getting fooled. Smart people keep getting fooled by it. Anyway, I will be back in half an hour with a collaboration with another YouTuber. So stick around for that. In the meantime, if you want to learn business, check out that course. Best bang for the buck you will see. The $100 MBA. That's not $100,000, it's $100. And there's a link to it in the description box of this live stream. That's where I put all my business knowledge. That's, like I have an MBA myself for what it's worth. This is me sort of living the principle that this stuff is in the public domain. This knowledge is not proprietary. It's been around for a very long time, and I think it's kind of criminal that a lot of universities and things charge like an arm and a leg for what they do to teach you that material. It's like paying someone like, you know, $100,000 to teach you mathematics. You know, it's like, well, you can learn mathematics from a textbook that's freely available for $5 on Amazon. You know, why would you pay $100,000? Yes, you might get like, you know, maybe a expert tutor or something, or, you know, you might have a really good teacher maybe, if you're lucky, but do you need to spend that to learn the material? No, you don't. So therefore, it shouldn't be the province of people that have $100,000 to learn mathematics. Same with business. You know, what they teach you in an MBA is really not rocket science. It is incredibly useful if you want to do this kind of thing. So I encourage people to learn business if you want to be in business for a variety of reasons. You know, maybe you don't care about starting up your own company, but you want to be very valuable to your employer so that they will promote you into positions of increasing responsibility. Then it's pretty damn useful to understand business so you understand what's important to your employer. And you can make decisions that they would like more because you're acting almost like their agent because you understand what's important to them, you know, and you understand a lot of ways of doing things that you may not have seen firsthand in your experience, but you know it all because you've been taught the theory and you can put it into practice, right? So if you're interested in that aspect of it, or you're just interested in being an entrepreneur or doing a side hustle, I wholeheartedly encourage you to do it. That's why I created that course. So check that out, and you will not regret it. It has the same textbooks in it that they use in places like Harvard Business School in their MBA program. You're getting your information from the same sources. It's just at a fraction of the cost. And I provide you videos where I sort of guide you through it. You learn from the books. It's a self-study thing. You can do it at your own schedule to the depth that you're interested, you know, and there's no evaluations, no exams, no assignments. You can do that kind of stuff if you really want to go deep, but that's up to you. You don't have to. So check that out. That's something that I recommend for most people, and it helps open your eyes to the options you have before you for how to make money. There are other things besides just being an employee. So there you go. As I said, I'll be back in half an hour with the YouTuber Abby from the channel life-work balance. We're going to be talking about how to get hired. And if you ask questions and stuff there, you get me and her commenting on the same thing. So you get the recruiter's perspective, you get my perspective, the sort of hiring manager. So stick around for that if you're interested. Other than that, I wish you guys nothing but the best. I will be back next week with another episode of Side Hustle Ideas. Until then, take care of yourselves.